Hi, it's Ray from Pro Shaper Sheet Metal in Charlton, Massachusetts. I'm back again. I'm going to do something a little different today. A lot of students that come to my class, they have zero experience. They see stuff on the internet, they read magazines, watching TV shows, and they say, boy, I'd like to learn that too. And you know, I've got my old car in the two-car garage or out in the barn, and it's got some rust issues, and I really don't have the money to send it off to some restoration shop, and I got to learn how to do it myself. So the first step with my students, or with you if you don't have the experience, is what do I buy? I'm going to try to help you out here where to start. These are tools that I find that I use all the time. Some of them I've had for many years, some of them are new. So this is the hammer collection and the dolly collection. I have tons more. I have lots of hammers. I have what's called a hammer tree. It's a tapered, looks like a tree, and I got all these slots and I got all my hammers in it, and people go crazy about collecting hammers. But the truth be told, I don't use too many hammers. But the ones I do use, I use a lot, and I love them. This is my snap-on. I don't know what number it is or whatever. You probably can still buy this one. It has a really nice feel. I've changed the handle on it, put a grip on it. All my grips are kind of wore off now. And I only use this end. And if you buy a new hammer, you can't use it the way they sell it to you. You have to dress it. How do you dress it? Well, you use a foam pad, and I use hook and loop sandpaper, and you slowly sand the front of it, and you relieve the edges. And the problem with body hammers are a lot of them come with hard edges, and this is true of all the shaping and panel work tools, is they'll come pretty much unfinished because it's a lot of labor to finish stuff up, and they can't economically sell them, so they almost expect you to do the finishing touches. So you have to relieve all the edges. On this one here, I've got a little bit more of a crown on it, and this end here, the chisel end, I probably used it about 10 times in my life, and I've had this since I was like 14 or 15 or something. Bought this a long time ago, 50 plus years ago. So that one I use the most. These other ones, probably the next one I use the most is this one. This is a door skinning hammer, and it comes completely different. It comes kind of flat on both ends when you first buy it. These are readily available, and you can buy them used on eBay too. And I've dressed this one so it has a round, nice radius going this way and a radius going this way, and I use this for wiring edges. So when you turn a 90-degree lip on the edge of a panel, you put the 1/8-inch wire in there, and you have a dolly holding the wire, and you can knock that edge right over. This side I ground to flatten, and I don't use this side at all too much. It's mostly this side. So that one is used a bunch. This one I think was flat when I first bought it, but I decided to dome both of the ends. Again, you're using that hook and loop in the foam pad. I'll show you that in a little bit. And I probably could even do a little sample once we get to the air tools. But these are all relieved, and I've domed them. This has a strong dome. This has got a weaker dome, so this would be more of a mild, a low crown, and this would be more of a high crown. Now this hammer here, this is actually a Pexto, and I found this in an antique store. I paid, I think, $3 for it about 35 years ago, and it was just flat on the ends, and I radiused it in one direction on this face, and I radiused it in an opposite direction on the other face, and that's a good utility hammer. I use that a lot. Now, even more important than my hammers is my slapper. I use the slapper a lot more than the hammers. And this happened to be a Duesenberg spring I got from my grandfather's restoration shop years ago back in the 60s. And it just so happened it was the perfect thickness and the perfect width, and it had a little arch to it, which is nice. And a lot of people ask me, you know, what's the width here? Well, it's about 2 1/8 wide or so, and that's about 5 1/2, 6 inches long here. And then you got your little offset, and your offset can be about 1 3/4 or 2 inches. That gives you your knuckle clearance, and then you can cut a little tang out with a cut-off wheel or a torch. And this one's got a real crude handle on it, and someday maybe I'll make a nice handle, but it's comfortable, and this has a really good feel. It's spring steel. I think it's about 40 something Rockwell. It'll mock up a little bit, so you got to dress it every once in a while again with that foam pad. And this is my go-to tool to take any dents out or fine smoothing or whatever. And you use this with the dollies. Now I have a whole big collection of dollies. I got my A-draw dollies and I got my B-draw dollies. But guess what? I use hardly any of them. I use this one and this one probably the most. I have every configuration dolly you can imagine. And if I see one I don't have, I would probably buy it, and I probably wouldn't use it. It's sort of an addiction. So this is, I think this is a store-bought one. I bought this, I think, on eBay, but I used to have one like this when I bought it when I was a kid, but it disappeared one day. And we cloned it about 3 or 4 times, so we've got a bunch of them. But this one I bought on eBay probably in the last year or so, and this has a lot of utility. It's got nice edges on it here and nice little high crowns, and you can take just about any dent imaginable out with this. This one I had to make myself because nobody makes this. It's a little you know, triangular type shape here with the top cut off, and I just tried to put a bunch of different nice little facets on it. This has a rounded face to it. This has a flat face to it. This is a straight edge. This is an arced edge. And this is great for when you're tipping a flange and you want to dress that flange, bringing it up, holding a wired, the wire in when you're wiring an edge. It has a lot of utilities. I had a chunk of 4140 and I cut it up with the bandsaw, ground it a little bit. It takes 2 or 3 hours to make, maybe 4 hours to make something like this, and you have to heat treat it. We have a little small electric heat treating oven, and it's not that hard a deal to do. So, and even if you didn't heat treat it, as long as you keep dressing your dolly, even if it was mild steel, it'll work fine. So, those are my favorite dollies. And then this is a lead shot bag. These are really nice. I've got a video showing how to take dents out in aluminum using this lead shot bag. You got to go into my Pro Shaper YouTube channel and look for that video. And we were working on the Lotus body, taking out these little small dents using the lead shot bag, the slapper, this hammer, and a torch. And very handy tool to have is the little handheld lead shot bag. And then when you go to the shaping, you need mallets. I'm a dealer for the Trusty Cook hammers, and we sell a bunch of these. These are lower price compared to mine. They're great for light work, but it's difficult to really do heavy shrinking in 18 gauge steel or even 063 aluminum with these, but they just don't have enough oomph to them. But these are great for doing little subtle stuff. So we use these in the class, and a lot of students like to purchase these when they leave the class. But this is the main shaping hammer. I have a couple configurations. This is my metal handle one. I like the metal handle one the best because number one, it has a long handle, and you don't have to swing this with your whole body, and a lot of people do, and it really tires you out pretty fast. You basically got to have to lift it, and then you just bring your arm down and you're snapping it down. You don't have to expend too much energy. And these have Delrin heads, and you get 4 heads with it. They screw in. You unscrew them and screw the new heads in. But usually I use, this is the medium crown and this is the low crown. Probably use that 70–80% of the time. And if you need to, you can change these other heads out. And that does a really good job of stretching and shrinking. Alright, now let's take a look at some of the grinders that you could use. These are pretty much all low dollar grinders. I would love to have a whole bunch of American made grinders, but it's just impossible because I need a lot of them for the class. and they are very expensive. They do last a long time, and a lot of the grinders are made in China today. Even the DeWalt, I don't know if that's made in the US or whatever, but that's the better Home Depot brand that they sell is these DeWalts. I think it was like $80 or so. It's a superb grinder. I also use the this is the little right angle grinder. This is the Husky. I don't know where they're made, but I suspect that they're made in China as well. And this is a Harbor Freight little right angle grinder. This is the top of their line, air tool line, which is called the Chief line. And that's a nice little grinder. And I think they'll last a long time. So let's start with just these. These are my main workhorses here for grinding. And I use these for grinding wells and edges of panels, little detail work. And I prefer this Norton Blaze. I buy these all the time. I've been buying them for probably 10 years or more now. I believe they're ceramic abrasives. It's a high quality one. You can use the lower quality ones, but they just don't cut like these do. So I'm addicted to these. And I just started getting this brand here, and right now I can't remember what brand it is, but it's an 1.5 inch diameter, and these are I think 1.25 inches. So you can buy these different little rubber backing pads. These are Rolocks. They turn right on really easy, quick change. And I have this one is a 3-inch. This is I believe it was a 2-inch or 1.75 inches, and this one's about 1.25 inches too. So this will allow you to grind just about any sheet metal, weld, or any imperfection that you want to do. And this is more of the coarser, these are all 50 grit discs, and it's for coarser work. For fine work, I use these assortment of grinders here. And this one would be to get into tight spots, and these are the little hook and loops that I make up. I make these by taking these Norton's sanding 6-inch discs, and I made the little cutter. It's not hardened or anything, we just turned it up on the lathe, welded it, and we can cut our own little discs really easy with that. No, I didn't hit it hard enough. There's the little disc, so you can get about 6 of them, I believe, out of that. And once you try hook and loop, if you haven't tried hook and loop, it's the way to go. This is a really nice, superb little grinder. It's a Home Depot sourced Husky, and the little foam pads I actually get at Harbor Freight. There's other places to get them, I believe, also. It has a 1/4 inch chuck that it has the collet on it, and it'll tighten up on it. So I make all different grit disc pads for that, and have a good supply always on hand. Now if I wanted a little bit bigger, these are the standard 5-inch, but you can buy them different sizes, but they get beat up on the edges. People try to grind too much and they start grinding the foam pad, and the foam pad does not grind. I found that out, but my helpers and sometimes the students insist on grinding with the foam. So these get worn down, and if they get worn down, then you can cut them down, and then you can utilize the center of a disc, say, or a pad. Here's a hook and loop disc here that's a 600, which we use to clean up the English wheels, and it only gets used on the outer edges. So now if you have a bunch of different sizes of the foam pad, now you can use that and be able to utilize that center section there. So I do the same thing with these grinding discs. I cut them down, and when you cut them down, probably should go get a clipper and cut one down. I'll show you how I do that. So here's a 3-inch Norton Blaze. It's worn pretty bad on the edges. There's still a lot of life left in the center. So when I cut those down, I'll get a couple uses out of them. You put it on the pad like that, and then I have a dedicated old whisk cutter, and you just cut these facets off like this, just a little bit at a time. I do about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. Like that. And now these tips actually are your best helpers. They grind wells really superbly, and so I have that all in my arsenal of grinding tools. This is the rough tools, and you can do the same thing with the fine tools. So these are all fine sanding tools, and this is the hook and loop pad. I buy them from McMastercar.com. I think they're about 23 bucks now. And it has a 5/16 fine thread on it, 5/16 24, and this grinder here is a Harbor Freight Source grinder. I've had terrific luck with these. They have a fine 3/8 thread, so in order to put this hook and loop pad on there, you have to have this adapter. We make these adapters and we sell them. They're on the website, and that gives you this little distance here will give you a little clearance for your knuckles, and that hole there allows you to put a screwdriver or whatever in it, and you can take the foam pad off when you need to. So this is for fine finishing of wells, along with this one. It's just a bigger surface, or cleaning or sanding of some sort, and that pretty much covers all my abrasives, except for this little, I've spoken about this in a bunch of videos. This is my little 2-inch Orbital Sander. It's a detail sander, and you get an orbital motion out of it. I use this in the dent repair and cleanup of rust and everything. It's just a real workhorse. I bought about 4 of them, and I haven't had one die in like a couple of years already. I'm really waiting for one to die, but one won't die on me. And I don't oil them all the time either. But they're really rugged. They're Chinese sourced. They come from Harbor Freight. Super well priced. Can't say enough good about them. They're just awesome little tools. So this takes the hook and loop also. And if you watch that shrinking disc video I just did a week or so ago, or a couple of weeks ago, you'll see how I use this. Great tool. So now we go on to this tool. This is another Husky from Home Depot, and I use this wire brush, and this is a knotted, I think they call it, wire brush. It comes around and there's twists, and this type is good for high RPM and is less likely to shed. So when you use a wire brush, you should always use safety face shield, because you don't want them sticking into you like a porcupine gutcher. They'll go into your shirt too. So you use this wire brush to clean all your steel wells. It takes all the fire scale off and everything. It's a well-used tool in the shop. And then this is the Harbor Freight Deluxe Chief Air Tool brand. And this is a 4-inch cutoff tool, and it has a floating guard here, so you can approach the cutting so that you can send the sparks away from you, or down below, or wherever you want to be. So it's got a nice safe feature, and the 4-inch disc gives you a little longer life, and it's super powerful. It's a really well made tool, and I did a video on this too, if you want to look in my video homepage channel. So then the only other thing we're going to talk about in the air tools here is the abrasives that I use. I'm a Norton guy. Norton is actually founded about 15 miles from my shop, and I've always used Nortons. I've used other brands too, but I find Nortons work really, really nice. And these are the grits we use. I use 6-inch diameter, 80 grit, that's the rough, then 120. That does very well for most sheet metal work. If you want to go up further, there's 240, and this is 400, and then I clean the wheels all the time with 600. So that covers my air tools and my abrasives, my cutoff wheels. I use these exclusively all the time. There's a few other extra little ones I use, like die grinders and things like that, but this stuff I use all the time. All right, the next up is shears. When you're working with sheet metal all the time, you're going to have to do a lot of cutting. And it was actually one of my students that told me about these cordless shears. Before, I'd always used a cheap, inexpensive Harbor Freight shear, which actually works really good, the corded one. But once you go cordless, you never go back. So these are a little pricey. They're about $325 or so. They can be priced higher. For some reason, Bosch doesn't take a lot of effort marketing these things, and it's sometimes even hard to find them. This is a 12-volt version, and now they're up to an 18-volt version. They charge in like 20 minutes. They come, if you buy it, you get the charger and the 2 batteries, and there's a multitude of different companies that sell them, but for some reason there seems to always be a lack of inventory. They have a little battery monitor readout there, and that battery's down to 1 star. It only has one light. It has 3 lights, and you can use this for about, when it's brand new, I think I was using it for about almost 2 days before I had to charge it. Now it's down to about a day or so, and like I said, it only takes about 20 minutes, and I have the 2 batteries, so I always have one charged up. And you can cut right on the line with these. You don't even have to use hand shears. But if you do have to use hand shears, the ones that are readily available today that I find are a good bargain and they work really good, and I get them at Home Depot, which is convenient for everybody, are the Milwaukee brands. And they're very hefty, and they have serrated edges. I'm not too thrilled about serrated edges. I'd prefer not having it serrated, but it's okay. And they have the left, cuts right, and this is the offset, so it allows you the room for your knuckles. So those 2 items there will do pretty much most of your shearing work that you'll be encountering in doing sheet metal. Alright, when doing sheet metal, you're going to be doing a lot of clamping too. And these padded clamps are my favorite. And this size I discovered, I don't know, probably about 5 years ago. And it was a size that really wasn't common at all. And I found this at the welding supply Praxair, which is, I think, a national brand. And when I first picked them up, I was so amazed because it says Real Gear USA. I says, wow, somebody's actually making a clamp in the United States now. But it says realgearusa.com. They are made in China, but they're very well made. And they're inexpensive. And you probably can get them on the realgear.com, realgearusa.com website also. But there's a Praxair down the street from me, so I get them there. I buy them right from the store. Excellent size. It's got a lot of utility. It doesn't deflect when you put a lot of pressure on them. They're forged high quality steel, and they hold together pretty well. They've got a nice safe release that doesn't bite your finger or anything. They got the rubber on the release and everything. Well thought out, well executed, and low price, available to everywhere. So the next favorite size I have are these little ones, and I saw these at Home Depot about 3 or 4 years ago. They started coming out, and I said, boy, I have a bunch of these already, but these are really handy, this size, because they're lightweight. And they've got a real good bite too. Excellent steel. They don't deform or anything when you really load them up. And they got this nice little crank on the end here. Sometimes the round ones are not as user friendly as this little forged flat one here. So those are I have a whole range of different throat vice grips, but I use these probably the most, with the other exception of these 2 little vice grips. These are Chinese sourced. They come from Harbor Freight, and they're very inexpensive. And these are excellent. The quality is not as good. The threads sometimes are a little boggy when you turn them in, and you have to put a little oil on them, a little white grease. But they're so lightweight, and they'll hold together the sheet metal when you're going to tack without the clamp pulling the piece down. And this is great for when you're wiring edges. You can hold a little wide inside that spot before you roll the sheet metal around it and everything. These little needle nose mini ones come in handy. Now, you've probably seen in my other videos when I'm fitting a panel to a wire form, I use these little squeeze clamps, which I get from Home Depot. and these are 99 cents a piece. That's the cheapest price I've seen anywhere. But I do add the rubber bits. This was from belting that we cut up. Somebody gave me a big length of belting. I cut it up with a bandsaw, and this has got some neoprene, but I think I mentioned in my last video on the English wheel there, I was doing the beginning on the English wheel. These inserts, you go to Tractor Supply, and they have a nice horse mat that is like 1/2-inch rubber, and a big giant piece is only like $26. So if you buy 20 of these clamps, that's 20 bucks, and you buy one of those mats, you can cut that mat up and make these nice protectors for the jaws, which gives you more squeeze power. And I use these all the time. I literally have about 200 of these in the shop, and they're always being used on different projects around the shop. Wonderful, wonderful tools. Alright, here's my grinders, the right angle grinders, electric grinders that I use with the shrinking disc. Now this is the 5-inch, this is a Makita, and this is a 9-inch Makita. I sourced them both from Home Depot. You can buy them online, but Home Depot generally has a really good price, and you can go try it out or lift it up and feel what it looks like and stuff. And anything made by Makita is generally high quality, so I've never had any problems with Makita quality at all. So this is the one you use for the 5-inch shrinking disc. Here's a new disc here. And a lot of people buy the 5-inch shrinking disc and they don't put a backing pad on it. Here's the backing pad you want. I'd make a backing pad if I could make one, but I can't make it for $4. So this is a source at Harbor Freight. It works really good. I've used them for years with no problem. There it is behind here. You can do the 4.5 or the 5-inch backing pad. This one happens to be the 5-inch. And this one has a 5-inch back in behind it, but a 4.5 will work too if that's all they have in the store. And the mounting on it is pretty simple. It's got the lock, and that backing pad also comes with the correct nut. That's the flanged and necked nut. It has the neck here, which is 7/8 inch diameter. This is the 7/8 inch diameter hole that it integrates into, and this has the 7/8 receiver over here. This is a 5/8 11 spindle, which is the same size here, and you have to put washers sometimes. You space that like that, and when you're done, you tighten up the nut. And you want that nut to be below surface, because now you can run it flat like that without the spindle biting your sheet metal. And this mounts the same way, except this one we make our own backing pads here at Pro Shaper. We sell them on our website. We make the shrinking disc, the 9-inch shrinking disc and the 5-inch, both here at Pro Shaper. We press them out and mount it up. There it is. There's your backing pad, and this is the central hub support here. And again, you want that same type of nut. That's called a winged and flanged nut, and we're hoping to make these 5/8 11 nuts. We'll offer those for sale in our website. And someone from France, and in Europe they don't use that 5/8 11 thread. They use a 14 millimeter by 2 millimeter thread on the big grinders over in Europe. So I'll be able to make that nut too and have that for sale. So if someone from Europe buys one of my shrinking discs, they can buy the correct nut too. And we're hoping also to do this backing, the central hub support. They have this little 3 or 4 inch central hub support which stabilizes the disc. If everything is set right, it'll run pretty true, but they don't have to run perfectly, because once you put the shrinking disc on the surface, it all settles right down. So now these Makita grinders I've had for years. They run and run and run, and I haven't even changed the brushes on them. In fact, now I have another one that I use for general grinding in the shop for heavy grinding. That's a 7-inch. I leave these dedicated for the shrinking discs, And I also have 2 more of these 5-inch Makitas, one with a cutoff wheel and one with a 5-inch grinding disc in it. So it's really handy to have all the different sizes. So that's it for the grinders. All right, here's some of our beater bags that we make. This is a 12-inch diameter beater bag. This we mentioned just a little while ago with the all the body tools. This is a lead-filled handheld shot bag, and this is a 14-inch, and this is a 20-inch. We also make a big rectangular one, which is called a super bag, and then we have even a bigger one. The thing's about this big, that's called the mega bag, and I use those a lot with the classes. You can put a whole fender on them, and it stabilizes the piece really well. This 20-inch has got a lot of utility, but you can also use these. Typically I use these smaller bags more for weight bags, and people think that you can get away with just having one shot bag or one sand bag in your shop. But generally it's good to have several of them, because you use them more for weight bags than you use for actually beating the sheet metal out. Now everybody says, well, what do you put in them? Well, this is shot, this is manageable. This weighs, I think, about 14 pounds or 12 pounds or something like that. And if you fill these up, they get progressively higher with shot. So if you fill this up, you probably wouldn't even be able to lift it. So what I've been using for years, I've never filled my bags, these size bags, with shot. I use double-aught sand, which you can buy in a 100-pound bag, which generally runs about $15 for a 100-pound bag. A 100-pound bag of lead, I think, is going to run you about $125 or something like that by the time you're done. So sand makes the most sense. I've been using it for years, for 35 plus years or so, and never have any problem. We use a really high quality leather, suede leather. It's a 5-ounce leather on all our bags, and we triple stitch them. And you can fill the bag with the sand with a little funnel, and then you just take 5-minute epoxy and you can glue the opening real easy. And you can reopen them if you ever have to, but you'd have to just use a little heat on them and release that epoxy, and you could re-epoxy them again. So the triple stitching ensures that they'll last for years and years and years. If you're careless and drive the sheet metal into the bag, it's very easy just to take a little piece of leather and the 5-minute epoxy and just stick a patch on it, and we've done that quite often, and that works very, very well. It never comes undone. So these are for sale on our website, proshaper.com, and this will take care of your bag needs if you want to have a beater bag. Alright, so here's a few other things that you can use. This is low stick tape, and this is the fiberglass reinforced shipping tape, and this is 1/8 inch vinyl tape. Now what do you use those for? Well, the vinyl tape I use all the time, and you use that to develop lines, both for shearing or for layout. This 1/8 inch vinyl will go around a nice tight corner. It stretches, and it'll allow you to pull a beautiful corner and snap nice clean lines. If you try to do it with a pencil or something, your hand will waver a little bit and you won't get a clean line. But with the tape you can lay out those lines beautiful. So we use that, and also in making flexible shape patterns, to lay out all where the gauge positions are. I have a video on my YouTube channel, how to make a flexible shape pattern, and it will show you the process and what the flexible shape pattern does. Here's a flexible shape pattern for half of a motorcycle gas tank that one of the students made here. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to work the panel out of arrangement. So oftentimes, here's a really good description of it. If you see, this was what the motorcycle tank would look like if it was all shaped up and everything was laying on the side. Like, you would see this high radius right here. But the beauty of the flexible shape pattern is it's flexible, as is the metal that you're working. So going from that high radius, which is not as efficient to work as a low radius. A low radius is a lot easier to work in an English wheel or any other shaping tool. So this allows you to work the panel out of arrangement. It's a buck, but it's a mobile buck. It allows you to fit your piece and develop your area value that you need. Once the area value is developed, then you bend the metal into its proper arrangement, and then lo and behold, you have the half of a motorcycle tank. With those 3 types of tapes, it'll really help you make these flexible shape patterns and laying out any of your sheet metal projects. And here's something else I want to show you is that you want to hold the flexible shape pattern on the panel or onto your wire form, and often other times the paper patterns you want to hold them on to your sheet metal, is you need a good magnet. And we buy these magnets in volume, and we make the little ends. It makes it really easy to take them off. These are Delrin ends, and these are neodymium or rare earth magnets. They got a really strong pull to them. They come in really handy. So there's a couple other things you'd find a lot of utility for if you're just starting out. Alright, so now we're on to safety gear, and I prefer a face shield to safety glasses. Why? Because the face shield protects your whole face, and oftentimes stuff can come flying up at you if you're using a cutoff wheel and you're abusive with it. I've never had one happen to me, but there's always these pictures with people with cutoff wheels embedded into their cheek, and I don't find that something I want to do. So I prefer to use these face shields, and I've tried all different types. This is the Harbor Freight brand. They come with these kind of rinky-dink little plastic tighteners here that strip out. So I substitute and put a little wing nut on here. I buy these little metric wing nuts and put a leather and a washer in there. I actually got a video in my YouTube channel showing how to upgrade these a little bit, but once you do that upgrade, these things are good for quite a while. And also from Harbor Freight, I use these gloves. These are great if you're in the cold climates and you want to drive your vehicle with gloves on. These would be good. They're super supple, they're great driving gloves, but I use them for English wheeling mostly, and they don't shed the leather. It's a pigskin, I guess, and usually some of the leather ones will keep shedding. And a wonderful buy from Harbor Freight. And then Harbor Freight came out with their Deluxe welding accessory brand, and these are the Vulcan gloves. I used to buy Tillmans all the time, and I swore by Tillmans until I tried a pair of these Vulcans. And these have a really long gauntlet on it, really protects your wrist really well, and I've probably bought about 8 or 9 pairs of these in the last couple of years, and everybody in the class has been using them, and some of my employees, and they get a lot of abuse, and they really stand up to the abuse really well. They don't fall apart. The only time they get broken is people try to grind tungstens on the grinder, the bench grinder, without taking the gloves off, which is a no-no, and they'll snag the glove on the grinder, and then a hole will start. But these I would label them as the best welding gloves, TIG welding gloves out there. They don't give you much thermal protection, but as far as suppleness of holding the torch and holding the rod, you can't beat them. They're almost indestructible. In the welding helmets, there's a whole array of welding helmets out here, and I had just a baseline $25 welding helmet for years and years and years. I did have a automatic welding helmet when they first came out. It was an ESAB that I bought, and I paid like $400 for it at that time. And I found that using that, my eyes would be very hurt from the flashing that I would get, and even though no matter how much I adjusted, there was something wrong with that helmet. I didn't like it, and I ended up giving it to a friend. I don't think he's ever used it. So I kind of went on an anti-automatic helmet for many years, and I helped a friend out with some welding advice over the phone. And lo and behold, the UPS truck showed up a little while later, and a couple days later, and he sent me this Optrel, which is a Swiss-made helmet. And I've tried a bunch of them, and boy, this thing, I can't say enough about it. It's just a wonderful helmet. It really allows you to see the puddle both in aluminum and steel so well. And I got them glued in with double stick tape. I use a magnifier. It's a 2.5 power magnifier, and that's a glass lens. I buy those off of eBay. There's probably a dozen places you can get them, but I find them on eBay. And those are for opti visors. There's a visor that fits over your head, and you can pull it down over your regular glasses, and they have a whole bunch of different lens variations for it. So I buy just the, I think it's the number 5, which is 2.5, yeah, number 5, and that's 2.5 magnification. They have it in plastic and they have it in glass. The glass has better optics, and I still have pretty good eyesight right now, but I've been wearing those magnifiers for at least 25 years or so. And that really helps you see really, really well, and that's so important when you're welding. So even if you don't need a magnifier, buy a magnifier and try it out. You'll really like it. All right, next we're going to go to measuring, and this is one of my all-time favorite tools, is a pair of dividers. Dividers have a nice super sharp point, and you're measuring from point to point. It's got a really fine thread here that allows you to adjust the distance between the 2 points. And dividers just don't lie. Sometimes when you're reading a scale, your eyesight might not pick up the number. You get confused because it's tied in the day, your sugar levels might be off or whatever. This isn't affected by it, and you can get equal amount graduations very easy with the pair of dividers. It's probably a 5,000-year-old tool. Now, a variant of the divider is the Trammel Rod here, and you got to buy these Trammel points. I bought these years ago, and they basically never wear out. And you can buy different size rods. This is a 3/4 by 3/8 rod. That's what the size of the Trammel point is. And that allows you to do these long, super accurate, it's a divider essentially, but it's not confined by the size of the actual divider. You can add a bigger rod on here. You can put a rod on here 24 feet long, and you get a precision measurement. So if you're doing framework or something like that, there's nothing better than a pair of Trammel points. And this is the quick adjuster. You go to any way you want. This one does the same thing, but it also has a little fine adjustment right here, so you get about 1/4 of an inch play to be able to refine your point. Now, my other favorite measuring tool is a 24-inch scale. I get these from McMaster-Carr. They're stainless steel. They're U.S. made. And if you buy some of the inexpensive Chinese scales and you put them next to an American scale, you'll find out that sometimes they're off a few thousandths here and there. And it's super important to have a high-quality scale. So I have the 12-inch version of this, I have the 24, and I have the 36. The 24 has the most utility. I had a 36, and I had it laying on the bench the other day, and one of my students wanted to try out my cordless shear, and now it's a 32. So I'll have to be buying another 36-inch stainless steel scale pretty soon. Alright, next you're going to need a good welder. Now, a lot of people that are doing restoration or trying to do their original coach work or copying an original design or whatever, they're going to need a decent welder. And a lot of people think that a MIG welder is the way to go, but it is if that's all you've been doing. But don't hold back. Try to get a TIG welder and see the difference. If you haven't TIG welded, take the leap and TIG weld, because TIG welding is so superior to MIG welding. And it used to be that TIG welders are really expensive, and that's not the case anymore. They've computerized them basically. These are all circuit boards. They don't have big copper windings in them, which made the original TIG welders very expensive. And of course there's a bigger market. When you have a bigger market, prices go down. I have a little Chinese source TIG welder. It's a $300 welder. It only welds steel, but it's a superb welder. It light gauge sheet metal, it'll weld very well, but no aluminum. It's DC only. This is a medium level of the inexpensive welders. It's an Everlast, and I think this was about $900 or so, and that included shipping. And this does both AC, DC, meaning that it will do steel, stainless steel, copper. Aluminum requires AC, so it'll do aluminum also. It doesn't have pulse, it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but you can do a beautiful job with this machine on just about any type of sheet metal, up to probably about 1/4 of an inch thick on steel. Aluminum probably about 1/8 of an inch. It's got a decent duty cycle, and it's dual voltage. And you need the little medium argon tank. It comes with the regulator. It comes with a nice foot pedal, and they come with a warranty. They're a good little rugged little machine. It's a good. You're going to start off with a $300 one. It won't do aluminum, or you can take the leap, and this mid-range you can get them as low as I think about $600 to $1,000 or so. And then I have a couple of the Everlasts that are a little more higher range. They have the pulse in them and a little more bells, a few more bells and whistles. And I believe they're like somewhere between, depending on what brand you buy, and say $1,200 to like $1,800 or so. With the welding, you're going to need that helmet we showed you before. But this is a nice little stainless steel wire brush which you're going to use with aluminum welding. And I get these from Home Depot. They're a great little brush. A lot of times you use the little small ones. This just have a much bigger footprint, and it's more handy to use. Now, one other tool that you'll need to get started is probably an air compressor. Air compressors, you can buy a really inexpensive one, but expect it to be burned out in about a year or so. So you can spend anywhere from a low of $300 for an air compressor to run a couple air tools, or one air tool in your shop at a time, to one that could be $2,500 for a really decent one. Or you can go for the used route and buy a used one for $500 or $600 that might last for years and years. That's what I've done in the past. I bought used ones and made sure that the oil is good and the seals aren't leaking, and the motor might have a problem, so you might have to change the motor or the belts or something. So you got used options there, and you got new options. There's plenty of price range, but you're going to need a good compressor. So I hope this helps out all the people just starting out. It's a wonderful craft once you start doing it. It's very addictive, and you'll find that it reignites some spark in your soul, and you just won't be able to get away from it. It's a lot of fun. I hope this all helps out. It's Ray Chalene from Pro Shaper Workshop in Charlton, Massachusetts. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, tell your friends, share, click the like button, leave comments. Thank you.